Hi, everyone. I'm Nina Simon, the author of My Sister is Going to Kill Me. And I'm so looking forward to talking about this family centered, big hearted murder mystery with y'all today.
All right, so I have to say this. This is how I get to do the introduction. But
Mhm.
my daughter bought this book for me because she thought it would be a fun buddy read. So
Yeah.
this is how I was introduced to you. And this book went viral. It really did great, and it made it smart. But today we're going to talk about this one. My sister is going to kill me. And one solid theme that I'm seeing kind of throughout both books is that we have a little family fuss, a little family dynamics, the problems, the things that go on between families. So before we get started, kind of tell us what the book is about.
Sure. So, My Sister is Going to Kill Me is a murder mystery about two mismatched sisters, Liv and Mandy. As you said, they definitely love each other more than they like each other. They are very different. But every year they go on a sister trip together. And this year they are going on a rafting trip down the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. And, as if their tensions as sisters were not enough, then there start being some threats. There is a dead body that hits the water, and really all hell breaks loose from there. So it's about these two sisters coming together and getting to understand each other better as they are finding and confronting and stopping a murderer in their midst.
Where did you get the idea for Babette or Babette, however you say her name?
Oh, okay, yeah. I guess I should back up and say, I wrote My Sister is Going to Kill Me somewhat inspired by a Grand Canyon trip I took with my own sister. And that trip inspired me for two reasons. One was on the family side, which was it was so wild to be on a trip with my sister, just the two of us, no spouses, no family, and to really be identified in this group of strangers as the sisters and to find ourselves both showing up as our 40-ish selves, but also showing up with all the Russian stacking dolls of all the layers of having known each other our whole lives. And as y'all know, if you have adult siblings, nobody like your sibling can bring you back again to when you were 5 and 6 or when you were 12 and 13, and really experiencing that with a group of strangers and doing so in the wilderness and in a somewhat risky or tough situation really puts pressure on the relationship in a way that made me think, ooh, this is good for conflict. But you're asking about Babette, which is sort of the organizing principle. It's a company I made up for this book as the organizing principle for this rafting trip. Actually, when I wrote the first draft of this, I wrote it as a rafting trip where nobody knew each other beforehand, which is often how, if you were to book a Grand Canyon trip for your own family, you might be in a trip with people you didn't know, and you're sort of discovering everybody along the way. And what I realized was when I read a murder mystery, when I'm introduced to all these new characters, I'm immediately trying to connect the dots among them and understand both who are they and who are they to each other. And I realized if everybody were strangers, it was going to be challenging to keep track of as a reader, and there wouldn't be opportunity as much for juicy relationships and secrets and lies between the other characters. So I decided instead to have my sisters, Liv and Mandy, basically be crashing the company retreat of the executives of this Goop-esque skincare brand who have a brand new product they're launching that is rooted in a miracle plant that is found in the Grand Canyon. So that's why the company Babette is going to the Grand Canyon. And then, you have to learn pretty early. One of the earliest mysteries in the book is how did these two sisters end up with this company anyway? And then you get into the questions of what's really going on with this company and with the family behind it.
So when I read this book, it grabbed my attention from the first page. I loved it. And it was so well thought out that the things kind of seemed to flow extremely well. Did you plot it or are you more of a pantser?
I like to, I'm a plotter, but I'm kind of a headlights in the distance. It's sort of like I want to know what's happening for, say, the next 50 to 100 pages, and then I write that, and then I go forward. And actually, I admit that I had a hard time in the beginning with this book I did not start with a whole plot, and I always think it's weird when I hear this on podcasts when people say I didn't know who the murderer was, or but I sort of felt that way in the beginning of working on this book because when I started, I was starting with these sisters and I was starting with the setting, and I also very early on came up with this title, "My Sister Is Going to Kill Me." And Teresa, you were bringing up my first novel, Mother Daughter Murder Night, which also deals with family and also has kind of a clever tongue-in-cheek title. And as soon as I came up with this title, "My Sister Is Going to Kill Me," I knew it kind of would speak to, it would rhyme for readers who liked Mother Daughter Murder Night. So I actually for a long time was like plotting from a place of like, how could I make this title make sense was important to me. And then I think the other thing with a project like this, Sherry, is that there's this funny plot problem I had to really work through, which was I had to get the characters far enough down the river that as soon as there's a murder, they couldn't just be like, oh, let's cancel the vacation. And often in a murder mystery, we want a dead body right in the beginning as readers. And so I had to find a way, and I experimented with a lot of different things, but I had to find a way to let them get a little further into the river and into the story before there was a dead body, while still kind of building up the stakes and the tension. And I actually really feel grateful that that show White Lotus was so big while I was writing this book, because I think that it's sort of a masterclass in not only not revealing the murderer till the end, but also not even revealing the victim till the end, which I did not do that here. You when dead bodies hit the water, you know who they are. But I did have to do a lot of plotting to think about how do I ratchet up the tension and get them stuck enough that they really are trapped with each other and with the murderer in a credible way once that starts going down.
Okay, so my question is kind of two parts. There are a lot of characters that are in the book because they're all on the rafting trip,
Right.
and they all play an important part.
Mm-hmm.
How hard was it to keep them all separate? Like, do you do like a character board for each person, and
Yeah.
then the youngest person on there? And Sherry and I talk about this new lingo these people say, like it's giving. I literally marked it on here. She said, I said, oh man, she said it's giving. It's giving. So how hard was it to kind of keep them separate? And then is it difficult to relate to those young people? Because I think
Mhm.
it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting kind of book because when you have this kind of locked room mystery where everybody's on the rafting trip, you both have a smaller world than in many novels, but you meet everybody at the same time, which is hard. And so, actually, the first draft and the first outline for this book, there were about two or three times as many people on the rafting trip. And it was my agent and then my editor were like, cut it back, cut it back, cut it back. And so by the time I had the cast that I had, I felt like it was manageable. And I did feel like I needed every one of these characters because some of them, as I was cutting back, I was like, okay, I could make those two people into this person, but I felt like, okay, I was left with all the people I needed and they all had a critical role to play. When it comes to the youngest character, Imogen, who's a teenage influencer who is on the trip because she's the new fresh face of Babette, the skincare company, I had a lot of fun writing that character. And it was actually quite interesting to really spend time I'm not a big social media person. I'm a big outdoors woman. And just to really understand a little more about how intense the world of influencing is. And especially if you're a teenager, I feel like any young person who is sort of doing an adult job while also being a kid, this happens with pro young athletes as well. There's sort of this weird way that they're both too mature for their age, but also kind of outside of some parts of child life. So I had a lot of fun with that. I have a 13-year-old, and so I've spent who's both very adventurous and very happy to tell me that my new voicemail greeting is so cringe. So I feel like that was helpful as well.
Did your 13-year-old enjoy seeing what Imogen was saying and doing? Did you get
Yeah,
approval?
yes, although my 13-year-old identifies much more with somebody like Katie, who's a young river guide, in that, we live out in the woods. My kid has a very wild life. And so I think that the kind of fancy influencer character was, irrespective of age, was not necessarily someone she gravitated towards. Yeah. I did have a lot of fun. I think there's a part where Imogen says that Deer Creek Falls, which is an incredible waterfall in the Grand Canyon, is mid. And as somebody who loves being in the great outdoors and nature so much, I always like, and I did this with Mother Daughter Murder Night too. I love writing a character who's unimpressed by nature, because I feel like often as a writer, you can get indulgent about the things that you just love so much. And I definitely love doing the nature writing that's in this book. But then I always want to have a character who feels very differently from me and is just like, ugh, trees, or ugh, that water's gross. And so that was a lot of fun to do with Imogen as well.
Your covers are not typical
Mm,
covers.
yeah.
So, what made you want to go with this style of cover?
Well, it's not totally my choice, Scott. I mean, I
Mhm.
do love these covers. Let me just say that. But I also feel like when you go with a big publisher, I kind of analogize it to being a kid and being asked what you'd like for dinner. And if what you say you'd like for dinner is also what they were thinking, great, everybody gets that meal. But if what you say is not what your parent was thinking, probably you're not getting what. So I feel like my experience, and I've had great experience working with William Morrow and HarperCollins, is me saying, hey, here are things I like, here are things I don't like, and them coming back and saying, well, here's our vision. And fortunately, in my case, it's like, great. To what you're saying, with the first book, I was pretty nervous about that, to be honest. Yeah, this is Mother Daughter Murder Night. It's so simple, it's so spare. I mean, of course, that Reese's Book Club sticker does a lot of work on this. But but I think, and I felt, as you said, that it didn't look like anything in the bookstore, and I was concerned about that. But I then came to feel like, oh, the fact that it's different helps it stand out. And then I like that with Mother Daughter Murder Night, there was this little clever touch of these binoculars through the blinds. And I love, with My Sister Is Going to Kill Me, these legs falling into the water. And so I think that these little touches are great. And to be totally honest, while people like all of us may still be physical book people, a lot of people are buying books digitally, or they're buying their physical book based on a thumbnail that's like this small. So I think that I am seeing more books, as these ones are, that have big titles and are more graphic, because they're just easier when you're scanning on a phone and deciding to buy, to resolve, as opposed to some of us might think, oh, how does it look face out in a bookstore? The fact is, that's not how most people are buying books these days. As much as I love my local bookstore and would love everybody to be supporting theirs. Yeah.
So your first book was very popular, very big. Um, did you have any nerves about doing the second book as far as a follow-up? Because I've always heard like the sophomore book is harder to write sometimes than they debut.
Yeah. I didn't have nerves. I guess I always have been somebody who sees something like this as an opportunity to perform up to the expectation, as opposed to as a source of stress or threat or something like that. I think that the thing that happened, as opposed to being nervous, I had a different problem, which is most times your debut novel, for most people, can be pretty quiet, and then you can write whatever you want for your second book, because you haven't built up a reader base with expectations. And what happened in my case was, as Mother Daughter Murder Night became more and more successful, I started really wondering about the book I was working on as book two, which was super different. I still love that book, but I ended up not continuing to write it, because I realized that I was meeting all these Mother Daughter Murder Night readers who were really responding to the warmth in it, to the humor in it. And I wanted to go more in that direction. And that's not to say I didn't want to write a sequel. I didn't want to write the same book, but I felt like what I loved about writing Mother Daughter Murder Night, there was more in me for that. And I felt like I wanted to stay in relationship with these readers who were excited. And so I wanted to do that. So I think the hard part was not writing this book. The hard part was that I wrote three other half books that I felt like I like, but they weren't the right next book after Mother Daughter Murder Night. So I feel like now I'm a little ahead of the game for the next books, maybe. But I felt like I grew up the child of a rock musician, and my dad really taught me that the relationship between an artist and audience is sacred. And that doesn't mean that an artist should do everything their audience wants or something like that, but that you have to take seriously the fact that people are giving you their time and attention and their dollars, and that there's a relationship there. And so I feel like I wanted to continue to build that relationship with my readers with this next book. And I also wanted to, experiment with some new things that hopefully will make some Mother Daughter Murder Night readers be like, I like this more, or I like the first one more. I feel like from my perspective, success is people who read Mother Daughter Murder Night. About half of them like this book more, and about half of them like it less.
In
Let's
this book, I actually read this book first
Oh,
before Mother Daughter Murder Night. Um, and so I actually went back from reading this one and read Mother Daughter Murder Night because I loved it so much. I loved your writing style and
thank
everything
you.
that I just wanted to go back and read it.
Wow. So you're one of the first people I've talked to who's read both. What's your feeling about what's different about My Sister Is Going to Kill Me from Mother Daughter Murder Night?
I don't know if I can really say what's different about it. I mean, they both deal with, families and unique families, not your white picket fence suburban families type of
Yeah.
thing. Um, I I don't know. That's a hard question.
Yeah. To me, one of the big differences is that I think of Mother Daughter Murder Night as a true mystery, in that there are murders early on and the main characters are solving the mystery. And they're getting in a little danger as they do so, but they're more in the amateur detective seat. Whereas I think about My Sister Is Going to Kill Me a little more having thriller vibes, because there's this sense that we don't know who did it. We're right now with the murderer, and we're trying both to figure out who it is and to get out of here alive. So for me, part of what I was trying to do with this book was a little more fast paced, a little more main characters are in danger even as they're solving the mystery.
I think you threw a lot of red herrings in this one too.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. I had a lot of fun with that for sure. Yeah.
And you had to pay attention this whole time. Like there's no sometimes I'll get into a book and there's a lot of dialogue and I'll find myself almost skipping through it. And I was like,
Mm.
nope, I'm watching this. I'm gonna, and I would predict. I'm texting my daughter and I say, here's my
Nice.
prediction. And then
Yes.
here's my prediction. And I was wrong. I was
Okay.
wrong both
Nice.
times. So I try and do it at like 50 and 75%. And
Yes.
and then just write it out the end. And I was wrong both times. So it was that was fun.
I love meeting readers like you who do that. I, as a reader, always I think I want to do that. And then I'm like, no, I just need to keep reading. So I'm always impressed when people can make predictions. And yeah, and I have a lot of fun. It was something I learned early, actually, in writing Mother Daughter Murder Night, this idea that you want your suspects on a lazy Susan, and you want every new clue to make the suspect right in front of you seem a little less suspicious, but send you racing to learn something from the next one who's spinning around towards you. And of course, with this book, one of the fun things was, because they're all on a rafting trip, it's not like you have to go far to find the suspects. They're all with you all the time. So that really allowed a lot of energy to go into the dialogue, because I didn't have to spend a lot of time hunting somebody down in some way.
Okay, so my question is about poisonous flowers.
Oh, yeah.
And so and I know it's really interesting, like in different parts of the country, and not a lot of countries get as much diversity as we do in the United States. So like what's poisonous here, you're not even going to have there.
Yeah.
But do you ever worry that your Google history is going to get you in trouble? Because like sometimes I wonder what will happen to me.
Well, I do use incognito when I'm typing search terms like, could you kill somebody with X? But the poisonous flower that is in My Sister Is Going to Kill Me is called Datura. It is ubiquitous across the American Southwest. I mean, I was just hiking in Arizona last week, and we were just seeing it everywhere. And most of what I learned about Datura for this book, I definitely did some reading, but I really spent a lot of time with people who are close to the plant, including a woman who changed her last name to Datura because she feels such deep communion with the plant. And I was actually quite nervous to give her a copy of the advanced copy of the book, because for her relationship with this plant is so holy. And I guess we're using the word poisonous. I should say Datura is the source of a very intense psychedelic slash psychotropic drug. And so, yes, it is poisonous. It's extremely dangerous. I have not consumed any of it. I do not recommend anybody does. And even my friend who is obsessed with the plant does not recommend that anybody does, even though she has this deep relationship with it. Anyway, this is my caveat. Do not eat Datura. But I learned so much from her. And I was nervous to give her a copy because I felt like, this book treats this thing that she sees as a holy source of spiritual connection with nature as a killer. And so I was so grateful. Last week I got a text from her and she was like, "Oh, I just got to the part where they're really talking about the plant and its properties, and you did such a great job." And so I was just like huge relief because here is this plant that she sees as a goddess that is quite a vicious goddess at that. Yeah.
Is there anything that you have come across in your research that was a true shocker to you?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that the biodiversity of the Grand Canyon and the desert in general, as I've spent more and more time there, has just continued to blow me away. I think when you don't live there, you think of it as desolate and dry and dusty and dead.
Teresa and I and Scott have been to quite a few book events like BoucherCon, and I know you've gone to them too. From an author's point of view, what is your favorite thing about going to those type of events?
Sherry, I was so amazed when I first went to an event like that. And the first one I went to was Left Coast Crime, which is sort of the Western US
Hmm.
smaller version of then the annual, huge national BoucherCon, which is such a big event. And I was just amazed by how generous authors are. This is an industry where there are no rules about everything is both open, like it's visible, obviously, who's writing what, who's publishing what, to some extent, how different books are doing. But it's completely opaque in terms of the process of how are writers writing these books? What is their experience with that publisher, that kind of thing. And so going to events like that, especially before I was ever published, I was just amazed that people were so willing, including superstars, so willing to share about their own journey, to share really honestly. And I find it incredibly inspiring to be among them. I'm an extrovert. It's a funny thing about being a writer. In my past life, I had jobs where I was always standing up and talking in front of crowds of people. And so for me, getting to talk, getting to be with others, getting to be on panels, getting to moderate, I'm going to be on tour soon for My Sister Is Going to Kill Me. And I just can't wait to have those kinds of interactions. They really energize me and make me excited to write more so I can have more of those conversations.
So I do have a research question for the book, and this is what we were talking about. Skincare is like $1 billion industry. When you were doing the research for this, did you find that frustrating, that like, or interesting? Because there's some very specific information that's in there.
Sure.
How did that work out for you?
Yeah, and I have to be honest and admit that my skincare regimen consists of sunscreen. Like that is it. And so this was a new world for me, and I would try and make up complete what sounded to me like completely bananas products. And then when I looked at what really existed, Teresa, I was just like, these are even crazier than I could have imagined. Also, the name of the skincare company in this story is called Babette. At one point, I wanted to change that name for a variety of reasons. And I remember the email I sent to my editor where I said, every single French sounding woman's first name is a skincare company already, these all exist. And oh, that was it, that she actually reached out to me and was like, hey, I'm not sure if we should use the name Babette because there's like this one Swiss lady selling these this is a perfect example. It was like this weird like glove thing that you like rub your face with. I still couldn't really figure out what it was. But after looking at a million names, I got back to her. I was like, you know what? Every name has a skincare company associated with it. And so the research was mind blowing. It made me feel grateful to my simple sunscreen regimen. But it also made me respect that sometimes you hear about an industry that maybe you don't have a connect with, but you hear about how big it is. Certainly, I feel like video games is often this way for readers. And then a lot of respect for the professionalism, the diversity of approach, and the really deep research and passion that people put into it. Oh, I remember what Scott's question was. He asked if there was
Oh, the
anything in the
research.
research that
Yeah,
really
yeah.
surprised me. Um, and we were talking about the biodiversity of the desert. Um, and I will say that one of the things that was really hard to do in the book is I had to move some Grand Canyon River rapids, and I renamed a waterfall called Thunder River to Thunder Spring because it was just too confusing. And I did put in the acknowledgments a couple of notes about this, but I have a terror, Scott, that hardcore Grand Canyon people are going to be really upset. And I mean, and I consider myself a hardcore Grand Canyon person, but I was like, I just can't have so many river miles between this rapid and this one, or it doesn't make sense that a river fuels a creek that fuels a river. Like people are going to be confused by that. And so I felt a lot of discomfort, basically violating reality to make the story work.
Okay. What advice would you give to aspiring authors?
Hmm. I mean, write. Don't dream about writing. Write. Writing will help you write. And I think that just putting your whatever your biggest heart, your biggest joy, your biggest excitement is on the page. And I actually just feel this way about life. I once went to a great workshop, weirdly run by a deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan, called Zingerman's, about visioning. And it was about visioning, for business, but you could use it for your personal life too. And one of the things they really talked about was this idea that people have a tendency to edit our own dreams down, to kind of reflexively imagine how we will be critiqued or how we will be made smaller than our biggest dreams are. And one of the things they really trained me to do is like when you are envisioning the big, beautiful future you want for yourself, your business, your family, your book, whatever, put in all the things you want and none of the things you don't. Maybe, yes, maybe later down the road, you're going to have to edit some of those things out. In this book, like, oh, I wanted to put a dead body at the top of the Strat in Las Vegas. I wanted to explode a donkey. Like there were things I wanted to do that are not in this book. And because they really didn't fit at the end of the day. But I really think if you separate the writing and the creating from the editing and the distilling, you will be more joyful and free in your writing. And then when you're an editor, when you pull out that red pen, you're going to have more to work with. So don't squeeze all the juice out before you've even gotten it on the page. Like that's advice that I would share. And then the advice that I take that's related is Megan Abbott. I was an amazing thriller writer. I once heard her say, make weird choices. And that's something I think about a lot when I get to a point in the plot where something has to happen, is there's the obvious thing that could happen. And then I try and pause and write down what are 5 other things that could happen right now, and try and still pick one that is credible, that makes sense, but maybe is less obvious. Because readers, I think there's this weird paradox that when we are reading a book that we really love, we want to be both lulled into the fictive dream. We want to fall so much in the world that we believe it, but we also want to be woken up by things that surprise us. And we've all had the experience of reading a book that lulled us, but then it bored us because everything happened exactly like we expected. And we probably also had the experience on the other side of a book that just kept throwing in all this crazy stuff. And we're like, I don't even know where I'm going here. And so I think it's about that balance of how do you bring people into a world that feels real, but then keep bringing surprises in on every page.
So you said you're going on book tour pretty soon for the book. When you're on tour, are you able to really focus on this book, or are you working on your next one already?
I mean, I am working on my next one already, but this time I feel very lucky that, here we are a month before My Sister's Going to Kill Me comes out, and my editor and I have already agreed on the outline for the next book. So my plan while I'm on tour is to mostly focus on My Sister's Going to Kill Me. I love being in deep presence and connection with readers. I want to do that. But then it's nice to have this other thing percolating because I know I'll be excited for that quiet time back at my desk when I'm home. I think with Mother Daughter Murder Night, what was challenging was because that book did so well. I was on tour for so long, and then I ended up shifting what the next book would be. So a lot of what I wrote while I was on tour was for a book that ended up not even being my next book. So I feel a lot more comfortable this time. That's like, okay, I know what the next book is. I can play with and be in that space a little bit, but I don't feel like I'm under crazy deadlines or something like that.
Good.
Before we close out of here, do you have any, as I know we're on a time, but and when we're done, just for the record, I have a question.
Okay.
Um, because it's a spoilery one. But is there a bookstore that's close to you where people can get signed books?
Yes, absolutely. Bookshop Santa Cruz is an amazing independent bookstore, and I work with them to get signed books. You can have them personalized if you just go on their website or just call them. It's called Bookshop Santa Cruz, and they have signed versions of both Mother Daughter Murder Night, and they will have My Sister Is Going to Kill Me. And I can pop in there anytime and personalize. So I do that often, and I always love it when I get a call from the bookstore saying, "Hey, we got books to ship out. Can you come in and sign them?" So Bookshop Santa Cruz is the place to do that.
And give us all of your handles where readers can find you.
Sure. I'm Nina K. Simon, everywhere. I am named after a more famous Nina Simone. So I have to use my middle initial so that the search doesn't all end up with her. But it's just Nina, Nina, K as in Catherine, Simon, Simon. I'm most active these days on Instagram and I guess a little bit on Facebook, but that's also my website, ninaksimon.com. And I love hearing from folks, especially readers, especially like Teresa, if they're halfway through and have a prediction, I love to hear it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you to Kathleen Carter Communications too for hooking us up and getting this out. And we will, be talking to you very soon. And when you get the next one up, be sure and get us. So
Sounds
we'll
great.
talk
All
to you
right.
again.
Thank you.